Today I want to talk about traps. Bad traps, bad trap design, and good trap design, how to use traps. Let's start with two very terrible traps I have encountered in the past as a player. Spiked pit trap. Only way to avoid it is to pass a perception check. And if you don't, you fall into it, get some damage, and are considered prone. That is just a very boring trap. Not only a boring concept, but it's also boring to interact with this trap. The only way to avoid it is a perception check, and once you know it's there, you can't do much with it. Maybe you can push enemies into it or lure them into the trap, but that's about it. Next one. Holes in the wall that shoot crossbow bolts when you try to get past them. No, you can't avoid the trigger. It's a magical trigger. No, you can't trigger them with a 5-foot pole and then have them run out of ammo. They're magic. They reload magically. All you can really do with this trap is to avoid the corridor it's in altogether, or just run through and take the damage. Now, why are these two traps so crappy? Because they are no fun. But traps are not supposed to be fun, they are supposed to be deadly. Wrong. Traps are an aspect, an element of your role-playing game. So it should be fun to interact with these traps. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be challenging and deadly. But this shall now be our first rule of good trap design. Traps should be fun. Now, how do we make traps fun? I approach this by thinking about traps like some kind of puzzle. It's a challenge that has to be outsmarted. And that means I want the player characters, to come up with a clever solution to bypass the trap. I don't want them to get past it just by passing a skill check. But I also don't want them to trigger the trap just because they failed on a skill check. That means that a good trap can be spotted without a skill check, without a perception check. Either because it's really obvious, or because your paranoid players are checking anything for traps anyhow, or because you put so many hints in your descriptions that your paranoid players will spot the trap. This may not be realistic, as a good trap usually is one that is really hard to spot, but it is no fun for the players if they have no chance of spotting the trap, or if it comes down to a really difficult skill check, just so they know that a trap is there. If the realism here bugs you, just describe how they only managed to barely spot the trap because they were so paranoid and thoroughly checking everything for traps, but still don't demand a skill check. Getting past the trap should not be trivial. It should not be something that they can just pass with a skill check. It should force your players to come up with a creative solution, which also means it should be possible to outsmart the trap. Don't just use some arbitrary magical bullshit, but something your players can understand, make sense of, and come up with a solution for. That doesn't mean it can't be a magical trap, but if it uses magic, that magic has to follow hard rules on how it works, so the players can outsmart it and come up with a solution. Our second rule of trap design shall be that it should make sense within the context of your game world. This is not as important as the first rule, but it helps your players make sense of the trap and it improves immersion. So have your traps be in an appropriate theme and technology for whomever built them. Have they be in an appropriate place so they achieve something that whoever laid them wanted to achieve. And have the traps be of a scope that is sensible for whoever laid them. It doesn't make much sense if the poorly locked treasure chest in a goblin's den is guarded by a magic teleporting maze trap. A few rattling poisonous snakes locked in the chest might be more appropriate. So when creating the trap, think who laid it, why, and how much time and resources they would invest in building the trap. And really, those are the only two rules of good trap design. The rest is completely optional. For example, you could put some kind of time limit into your trap once it is triggered to really stress and challenge your players. Like a room that is filling with water, or maybe the ceiling is coming down to crush the PCs. What you can do here, you can wind up a really big ticking egg timer to show your players how much time they have to solve whatever puzzle, whatever mechanism will get them out of this trap, and then either place it on the table for extra stress or place it behind your GM screen. Then you can secretly change around the time if you're feeling generous, or for dramatic effect. Another thing you can do is put an encounter on top of the traps. Maybe an ambush even. Traps can really spice up a fight and enable unique challenges and tactics, especially big, impressive and dynamic traps that change the battlefield from round to round. Keeping all of this in mind, let me give you a few example traps. The first two are from the last dungeon I designed for the Forbidden Lands campaign I'm running. First trap. From the entry hall there are two corridors leading further into the dungeon. One is seemingly collapsed. The other is behind a locked door. If you go past this door, you come into a winding staircase at the edge of a deep shaft with no railing, slippery stairs, and real possibility to fall down through this deep shaft in the middle of the stairs. The trap here is that it's really easy to slip and fall into the spike pit in the middle of the staircase. The solution here would be to not slip by maybe generous application of sand, or to secure each other so you not fall, even if you slip, or to not go down this corridor at all because it's leading into a dead end. The solution is to go in the other direction, the seemingly collapsed tunnel. Upon closer inspection, the tunnel is not actually collapsed, but just blocked with a bit of rubble that can be cleared away with about an hour of work and reveals the way deeper into the dungeon. My players completely fell for this trap. They didn't look at the collapsed corridor. They broke their lockpick on the locked door. They wasted time battering down that door, and then they slipped on the staircase and luckily made their saving throws so they didn't fall to their death. Second trap in that dungeon. The tunnel leads through a depression. It's about 5 steps long and about 2 steps deep. There are 3 torch holders on the wall before the depression, 2 of them containing unlit torches. There's a strange smell in the tunnel. The trap here is that the depression is filled with methane. And if you go through it with a lit torch, it will cause a huge fiery explosion. The solution here would be to hang your torch at the wall, go through the depression, and then light another torch at the far side. Or you could try to burn off the methane from a safe distance, causing a huge fiery explosion but not taking any damage from it. Though the explosion will alert anything that might lurk deeper in the dungeon of your presence. So, warned by the staircase trap before, my players were wary of that depression and eventually decided to burn off the methane from a safe distance. 2 more traps, though one is arguably an ambush and the other is an example of how you can combine traps and encounters to make for an interesting fight. There's a deep chasm blocking the path, and an old decrepit suspension bridge is running over it. For safety reasons, only one character should go over the bridge at once and possibly be secured with a rope. The trap here is the group of bandits laying an ambush, waiting for half of the group of player characters to go onto the far side, and then once one half is on the other side, one person is at the middle of the bridge and one half is on the near side, then the bandits will come out of the hiding spot and demand a toll to use the bridge. If the PCs refuse to pay or attack the bandits can cut down the suspension bridge, dropping whoever is on it, separating the remaining players into 2 groups, and deal with the one that is on their side before making a clean getaway. A good solution for this would be to anticipate the ambush, because this is a prime ambush location, to pay off the bandits, or scare them away with a big enough show of force before they can cut the bridge. A massive fight with enemies coming from both sides and the group separated by a flimsy bridge might also be an interesting combat encounter. The last one is straight out of Dark Souls. A narrow walkway leading over dangerous drops and 1 or more giant pendulums swinging from side to side. This is a trap that is very obvious and easy enough to get past it if nothing else is happening. But now let's drop an encounter in the mix. Maybe some ranged attackers on the far side and a spearman blocking the walkway. The trick here would be not to stand on the spaces of the walkway where the pendulum swings through once every round, let's say on initiative 10, and not to get pushed or pulled into the drop in any other way. Movement abilities, and especially those that move an enemy, are really strong in an encounter such as this, and your players will feel like total badasses if they manage to pull this spear guy right in front of the pendulum. The thing to keep in mind with trap use, ambushes and encounters such as these is to not just use them to cheese your players. They should have a chance to see this coming and make use of these traps during the encounter just as much as the enemies make use of them. That's all I have for today. So my question for you: what is the best trap you have ever encountered? And how did you get past it? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, always check for traps.